Welcome to the Men of Valor and or School for Men podcast. I am your host, Scott Dozier. This is my co-host, Aaron Moon. I'm coming to you from a not so sunny Idaho. I just got back from California. I guess I took the sun with me when I went to Cali and I didn't bring it back. So we haven't seen the sun out here for like a week and it's 32 degrees today. And well, it is what it is. It's a different way of life up here, but it's all good as far as I'm concerned. I'm loving it. I'm enjoying the people and the environment and stuff like that. And Aaron's down in were you in San Diego right now? Where you at? Encinitas?
That's right. It's pretty stable place to be as far as the weather's concerned, but just like our emotions and women's cycles, they're changing all the time. The weather's changing. It's just the weather.
Correct. And today we're gonna just kind of talk about navigating life as a man and what that's like in today's day and age, and in the changing landscape, the changing sentiment. Everything sort of shifting around relationships and the viewpoint of the masculine and all those kinds of things. And it's, I guess we can get caught up in the latest rhetoric, if you will. I just try and authentically be myself and be real and be transparent and kind of be the person that my parents raised me to be. I don't get rattled by the noise too much. I know there's a lot of hating on men these days, specifically men who look like us, right? The white man is the reason for all of the
What, good
things
looking?
in
It's
society.
challenging to be so handsome.
That's funny. But I think that healthy masculine energy is needed now more than ever. I think that the embodied masculine is really important now more than it's ever been, so that we can kind of wash away that hate or that negative viewpoint around men, around toxic masculinity as it's being used so often. Not that there isn't toxic masculinity, because there is, but I think that the term toxic masculinity and throwing that around and hating on men comes from toxic femininity. And you don't hear that term thrown around a whole lot.
Yeah, I believe that there's toxicity's been around forever. Whether it's a poison that was crafted to be poured into the leader's ear at night, or just emotionally or physically abusing another person, whether it comes from a man or a woman. In our modern times, I think people in general, if you talk about feminism, there's a lot of varied opinions, but the rise of feminism, and in this country anyway, in the West, these 60s, 70s, fighting for their rights, taking on the qualities of the masculine, being more independent and cultivating their inner masculine, and assuming that there's no need. Now, there's one thing to say, I don't need a woman to complete me. I am whole and complete. I have a relationship with the Creator, and that's number one. That's the number one relationship I will always have. And if you don't have that, whether it's a man or a woman, we go looking for completion in the opposite sex or through outside, drugs, porn, whatever. It makes us feel better, when that sense of safety, personal safety, is an inside job. And I think what the women I'm talking to right now are beginning to understand is that the qualities, the traits that they've cultivated in the previous feminist movement aren't necessarily the traits or qualities that are really bring value into relationships. Yeah, it's great to champion the feminine, but what about championing the masculine? Now, the feminist movement, 50s, 60s, and 70s, has brought in this fierce, independent, doing, logic mind, thinking mind, and these traits of the masculine of performance and accumulating property and things, right? Accumulating wealth, accumulating status, accumulating a sense of structure and security, gathering resources. Well, those activities for women aren't necessarily the activities that are great at cultivating relationships or relational intelligence. And A lot of people are having a very hard time with these ideas and judgments about how things should be, which creates closure and collapse and friction. Now, thankfully, conflict brings energy. And if we are able to see it and really manage my own nervous system, then when conflict arises, I can name it and really do something skillfully with it and bring more intimacy, bring relationships closer together. Without that, there's confusion and friction and collapse and closure. So I think a large part of what's being lost or distorted in relationships, particularly from women and men that I speak with in circle, is being open and curious. People do not know how to be open and curious. Everybody's saying it's your job to make me feel safe. It's your job to make me feel safe. Men should bring safety. That's true. However, it does not place your safety, your personal sense of safety in the world is first and foremost your job. And I hope that, with all due respect, women are hearing this, and whether this triggers you or not, that's great. It's revealing something. Your personal sense of safety first is your job. I understand it must be difficult to be a woman in this world, being preyed upon, violated. 1 out of 10 men will abuse a woman physically or sexually. That's very conservative numbers. It's probably higher. It's what's reported across the data. And 7 out of 10 women experience this abuse. It's probably a little bit higher. That being said, it's your relationship with your creator and your personal sense of safety and being in this world is your responsibility. It's not somebody outside of you. And I think that's the tug of war that's being played out in the confusion. And it makes things very, very difficult when I say, you need to make me feel safe, Scott. I don't feel safe in this world. I'm going to put my arm around you and you better do a damn good job making me feel safe because I don't. And if you don't, I'm going to disrespect you. I'm going to shame you and I'm going to manipulate you to get what I want. And I see so much of that going on. It's very frustrating. It's very painful dynamic. And I think it's unfortunately very common.
You know, I think as a man, in our relationships, we do want to provide that, right? We want our woman to feel safe with us. We want them to know that when we're in public, we're on alert in a sense, right? I always like to when I go sit down in a restaurant, I always like to make sure that I'm facing the door. Something small, but I always like to know who's coming through that door, and if I need to jump into action, God forbid, on the rare occasion that something may happen, but I'm in a position to be able to do that, right? I don't want my woman to see something and mention it to me where I have to then, right? Or just, my parents taught me you walk on the inside when you're walking down the street with a woman, right? You're on the inside or you're on the outside, right? The outside being closest to the road and she is on the inside of you.
A hand at the small of her back as you enter in the restaurant, being present and opening the door for her, whether
Of
it's the
course.
car or something like this.
Yeah.
These are all like, I think, areas of containment. I know how to provide safety for myself and I can provide that for you so people don't fuck with you. And I think a lot of women love that. I just experienced this weekend.
They do.
My girl
Yeah.
was like, "Wow, I love that you're doing this. It means that you're present." And she prescribed her own meaning to it. And I thought, well, yeah, as much as I can be, moment to moment, I cultivate presence on daily basis through various practices and meditations, etc.
Yeah.
But she
Now
really
I did
liked
want
it.
to
I've been doing that a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. I did want to circle back to have you mentioned sort of the feminist movement in the 50s, 60s, whenever exactly the time was when it happened. Something that a lot of people don't know about that is that the feminist movement was not introduced and brought on the scene by women. The feminist movement was brought on the scene by Rothschild bankers who wanted to bring another taxpayer into the workforce.
Yeah, I believe it was French royalty or something like this,
It was a way
Fourier
to
or
harvest
something.
more money from the people, and in that we can talk about whether there's some grander scheme to disempower us or not. That's kind of beside the point in this. But along with bringing another taxpayer into the workplace, it also began to break down the family unit, because now you have two people that are out there doing what it is they're doing, and there's less time at home and there's less time with the children. And in that, with inflation, it's also become more and more difficult to survive with just one person being the breadwinner, right?
Yeah, it's not a good idea for you ladies to be go working in the oil fields, working as a bricklayer, toiling with your bodies consistently, right? That's what we're for. I'm giving an example here, but that's what we're for. Men are the drivers, the builders, the creators, the go-getters, the hunters, the protectors. Typically, now that's not saying you can't provide for yourself. I want everybody to be thriving, but it's probably not a good idea for if you want to be in this world as a couple and make children for both parents to be absent, right, from the family unit. I think there's a healthy dance here that we're talking about, a really careful balance. But I would love it if the feminine was supported in all things and encouraged in all things. I need flow. I need to be in a flow state. I'm a creative artist. I need to be in flow and feeling love and attraction and reverence and awe and worship. I have those in me. I'm describing those things as qualities of the feminine in us all. And what I really find very unfortunate is that when men in couples, women say they want emotional availability and certain feminine qualities in their man, and then when the man starts to express them, then that's when friction starts to enter the relationship. She acts as if there's something wrong here, or she can't handle his emotions. I think it's both persons' responsibility to manage their state. And also if there's friction to be able to co-regulate and repair, whether it's like he's just not paying attention. Well, maybe I just got done working for 12 hours and I come home and I need a transition period. That's not the right time to be like, hey, honey, bleh, here's all this stuff I need you to help me process from today.
Yeah, somewhat on topic there still, though. I think being able to communicate what your capacity is at any given point is really important in having a healthy dynamic. Sometimes like, hey, I don't have the capacity for this right now. Even I understand that this is something that you really want to talk about or whatever it is. I don't have the capacity for that. Being able to communicate that in a way that doesn't come off as dismissive. And maybe just saying, like, "Hey, I really, really want to hear all of this. I need to, like, shower and just, like, decompress," or whatever it may be. I need just a little bit of time so that I can have the capacity so I can give you my full attention. Something that I read recently, I think I sent it to you on Instagram actually too. It's, uh, like a Japanese philosophy, called Ma.
Yeah, I think it was called Ma.
Or Chinese, Ma, one or the
Yeah,
other. It's one of the Orient,
Japanese.
okay, Japanese, um, tradition, this Ma, where in time of conflict, and so, okay, we know that scientifically, the reasoning area of your brain, whichever part of your brain that is, shuts down when you're in a stressful situation, right? AKA, why people freeze in, stressful situations. Also, why sometimes you may find that when you're having an argument with somebody, how you can't think clearly. And you may reflect on that conversation 5 minutes later and be like, I should have said this or this or this or this or this. How come none of that stuff came to my brain? Well, it's because scientifically that reasoning area of your brain shuts down. And so that Japanese philosophy says, hey, let's sit down together in silence for 2 to 3 minutes. Okay. Don't say a word. just sit and allow each other to breathe, and in that your energies kind of co-regulate with one another, and then you begin to have that conversation, right? It
Ooh,
disarms
yeah.
that
Right.
shield. It disarms you from thinking fight or flight or danger, and then you can actually hear one another and you can have a reasonable conversation. To the habit of being somewhat avoidant, and wanting to, because I've had experiences of trying to have what I view as a difficult conversation with somebody that I care about, and them shutting me down, or them attacking me, or them making me feel like I'm an idiot for feeling like I need to say that. And looking back on a lot of those experiences, I realized it was just a projection of their own security, and it was not a reflection of where I was at, and I wasn't wrong in doing what I was trying to do. But it's created this trauma within me where I'm like, because I'm afraid of the rejection, right? I don't want to feel that rejection, so I want to avoid it. And I have not been good at saying, hey, I really want to have this conversation with you, and I know that it's important, but I don't have the capacity for it right now, and or like I just need a little bit of space because I can't think right now, right? But not knowing what was going on, I wasn't able to communicate that. So then it just becomes like I'm just avoiding and going somewhere else, and then that person a
Right.
lot
You're
of times,
leaving.
especially if they have an anxious attachment style, or like they're freaking out.
Yeah, and there's plenty of reasons for women to not like men, although they want to be with one, right? And I can imagine that that is very confusing. Like, I can't rely on men. They've let me down. Men aren't safe. Most men will abandon or dominate or fail me. These type of beliefs I hear often from women. And I think the pivot here is that a woman who doesn't trust men will test men until they are right. If a woman has these unconscious beliefs, she will test a man until she gets to be right. And it works like that in any unconscious beliefs, really. They will
In
come forward
anybody,
until we
you're
find evidence
creating
for
the
them to be right.
reality, right? You
And a
create the
man who,
so it supports your belief system, and you'll push and push and push until you get that reality, and not even realizing that's what.
and there's also the man who knows this, he's going to be able to pass the test without fighting the test or resisting it. That does not mean, let's say, this is your third date with a woman and she's disrespecting you, she's shaming you, she's criticizing you for some reason. I would probably would not earn me a fourth date, right? Unless she recognized what she was doing and she's able to turn it around. Now, if you're with a woman for 10 years and suddenly you find yourself in this situation, if you know that your woman's habits, patterns, maybe her trauma responses, and you know when her nervous system is agitated, you know it's a certain time of month when there's hormones going on that are magnifying tensions with her mind or her body, then you will know you'll be able to sit in that and pass the test. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't have spine or guts and stick up for yourself if the woman is not owning her projections, is constantly critical, projecting onto you constantly. And like, well, how could you, doing this sort of shaming thing? That's not a powerful feminine. I don't believe a man should just sit there and take it, especially in the early stages of a relationship. Okay. There's negotiables and non-negotiables, and everybody has their capacity. But that's my point of view on reactivity and masculine and feminine dynamics in the relationship in terms of like an argument. But there's no we can't argue ideology. What we can embrace is coherence. So a regulated man is going to make feminism irrelevant in the relationship because he's restoring trust through consistency and leads without demanding submission. And women soften in the presence of safety, not your ideas or what you're talking about. The feminine, I don't think that the feminine wants equality in the moment of surrender. She wants certainty. I think we all want certainty. And again, that certainty comes from my relationship with the creator, not my relationship with my work, my business, my family, money, the things I have, anything like that. I think toxic relationships come from confusion on this type of polarity. Men become passive or resentful, or like you were saying, avoidant. And women become controlling, manipulative, hyper independent. Don't touch me. Probably the worst thing a woman can do if she's upset at her man is say, "Don't touch me." Now I feel like, does this person not know me? Does this person not realize I have never harmed them and only protected them since I've been them? Now, violence, we're not talking about domestic violence here. We're just talking about polarity vacuums when things shift. It's like, no, I'm not going to. The best thing, if any woman is listening to this, I feel that one of the best things for a woman to do when there is a disagreement is hopefully you both have an agreement to pause when you realize tensions are arising, but touch the man, get closer, be quiet, and just touch the man. You think about King Kong, characters like King Kong or Beauty and the Beast or Nosferatu, right? When they come in contact with the feminine, their darkness, their struggles, their rage, whatever the problem is, Jane is here. It's going to be okay. Not to push back, not to escalate. I think skills to de escalate conflict, to recognize when energies are high and de escalate. Just what you're saying, this ma, like, whoa, there's some fucking energy here. Let's sit with it with each other just for a moment. Oh, I'm feeling really angry. I'm being an asshole right now. Now I know it's counterintuitive. Like, yeah, you are. Let me get the fuck out of here. No, there's get closer, get some contact, be quiet, regulate, and then you can talk and repair. Deal with the energy and reactivity. Nobody's ever going to change with the same mind that created the problem. And if a problem is existing, one of the hardest things to do, I think, is a pause. And that's where the light can come in, right? That's where consciousness can come in and pause. It takes skill. It takes a lot of effort, guys. But unless anyone listening, whether it's a man or woman, wants to continue operating in their life with all of their baggage, then it's time to change the pattern and learn these skills. Go to get a qualified therapist, go to the workshop, get a coach who is skilled in training you in these matters and work with your nervous system, work with your body, work with your habits, work with your subconscious mind and change that shit. Otherwise, just keep on getting sucked into the same relationships again and again and again and again. You'll stay there until you're dead. You wonder, what the hell happened? Well, because you didn't take personal responsibility. And if the relationship is chaotic, the masculine probably doesn't have an anchored nervous system either, guys. So she's going to magnify and deliver back to you what's already happening inside of you. This isn't, I wouldn't say that this is a universal law. There's occasionally, like, women, you've got your own baggage and you're going to bring that and you're going to spill it out and amplify that too. And if you're chaotic or insecure as a man and you're trying to date or hook up with women, you're wondering why shit just isn't working out or things are blowing up, it's because you have the conditions inside of you. She is just your mirror.
I think having a healthy communication around all of this stuff is at the top of the list for all of it, right? Like, you don't have to have all the tools. You just have to be able to communicate one another and understand what each other needs, and begin applying some of these principles together, whether it's ma or whether it's your own version of it or whether it's, like you said, just touching one another. What if when we're in conflict, we know that we care about one another. What if we just hug? What if we just have a hug? And watch that. Like, it's scientifically proven that hugs calm down your nervous system, right? Help you to center, especially a heart to heart, a heart centered hug, right? So my head is on the right side of their head. Interestingly enough, in society, we very 90% of the time we hug on the other side, or the head's on the other side, right? And there's not heart coherence. So the idea of hugging this side, which can be awkward, because most people are going that way, and so you're almost gonna like kiss the person your head is where it is. I'll just lean hard and make people go the other way, you know. But just having a healthy discourse about, you know, what we're trying to do here, or what we're working towards, or what's going on right now, and understanding what it is that can kind of bring the energy and bring the tension down a little bit, especially when we're like, hey, at the end of the day, we care about each other, and you know, we don't want to be at odds, and we can disagree on something, but it doesn't have to be this, you know, there doesn't have to be this resentment, this hateful type of energy. You know what I mean? It can we can just have a conversation, and we don't always have to be on the same page with it. Now, oftentimes you do want to get on the same page, and that's why you're having that conversation. But understanding that there's two different people, and that, you know, there's more than one way to get to the result, right? And so maybe you're both wanting to get to the same end destination. You have different ways of going about doing it. One way may be uncomfortable for one person, and the other way may be uncomfortable for the other person. So figuring out what that common ground is. And I think just having healthy communication around it can solve a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, bingo. And I think maybe this goes to the beginning. This could be, you know, we're talking about feminism. We're talking about toxic relationships. We're talking about the fact that, it's January 17 to 21st, which is like the quitting week for everybody who's ever done New Year's Eve resolutions. Like, this is like, good job. You did 2 weeks and now it's fucking over. For me, the return of the divine masculine is what's going to help everyone to stick with the plan on what they know is good for them, not adapt to social norms, your friends' habits, your lovers at your family, not adapt to the world. We've done enough of that. We did it when we were infants and children. So we made sure we weren't abandoned. We became someone else who they needed so they could stay comfortable. They, meaning our parents, caretakers, teachers, etc. And this isn't a hit piece on feminism. This is a conversation about polarity, responsibility, and initiation. I think we're in an initiation crisis. Women and men are both not initiated into womanhood or manhood. And I think that feminism had probably honorable origins that arose from absent fathers, tyrannical masculinity, economic and emotional control. When masculinity fails, the feminine compensates or adaptation occurs. It's like you could put me in isolation. Let's say I'm a criminal, you put me in solitary confinement, and you're just feeding me like gruel a couple times a day. I will adapt to that. There will be adaptations made, right? Especially go a few years, 5 years, 10 years later. How will I be then? Probably a bit more feral, right? And like broken down, but there will be adaptations in relationships. When my presence isn't there, when I'm bringing my shit unprocessed into the relationship, there's probably going to be an adaptation to that if I'm putting my unconscious into the relationship. And I don't want to see those imbalances. That's not harmony. And I think there's a huge difference between what we're saying is divine masculinity, which I think equals strength, emotional strength, regulation. It's not control, it's containment, it's not dominance, it's direction. But it starts with here first. If I don't have a container or direction for my own life, how the hell am I supposed to bring that into anyone else's life, especially that of a woman?
And I think you touched on something that is really important and that we're missing nowadays. Is like we used to have these initiations, right? These initiations into manhood, these initiations into womanhood, where you it was a rite of passage, and you had to earn your place within the tribe, you know, and there was certain things that you needed to do that weren't easy, that challenged you as a person, right? Like we learn through our hardships, and we're in this society nowadays where like everything is built for us to be comfortable all the time. And there's like we're missing hormesis, right? This idea of little bits of stress that encourages and improves us. It's why we go to the gym. We put our muscles under some stress so that they can grow. Well, it's the same thing for the spirit, same thing for the mind. It's not just for the physical body, right? Like we need to experience bits of stress that helps us to grow, right? That saying that comfort and growth, they can't coexist, right? You got to get uncomfortable to grow. But we're in the society nowadays where we're constantly seeking comfort. And in that, you never find who you are. You never learn what you're made of when you don't have to push through something, when you don't have to do something that you don't want to do or that you don't know if you can do, because we're like, oh, that seems hard or that seems difficult or that makes even the thought of doing that makes me uncomfortable. I'm going to go back to my house and go get on my phone and scroll social media. Or I'm going to go back and play video games. I'm going to go turn on Netflix or whatever it is, like we're missing this, and I hope that we're getting back to it. This idea of, kind of a trial by fire, and getting together with other men and women getting together with other women and having healthy conversations about what are you working on right now? What am I working on right now? How can I support you and hold you accountable to that so that you can continue improving and progressing and getting better in your life so that you can show up and be the best version of yourself for all of the people that are in your life, including your woman, you know, including your children, including your parents, including your siblings, right?
Yeah, I think you nailed it on the head with just with that first comment about initiation. This idea of feminism is not what is harming relationships right now. So feminine doesn't break relationships. Uninitiated men did. Uninitiated men create chaos, create instability.
Well, and I think you said earlier, the feminism rises up and tries to overcompensate because there's not a healthy masculine there. So she is now mirroring this aspect of you, which is not.
Unconsciously attempting to initiate the man on a daily or multiple times throughout the day. And the man's like, I'm not ready for that shit. I don't want that shit. I don't want this trial by fire. Well, guess what? You and your woman's mind unconsciously are going to keep trying to create these scenarios of challenge. Otherwise, in order to help you grow and become present and know that she can trust you, or you go to the gym, you get in the men's circle, you go get initiated. And maybe you need to do it again and again and again until you get it. But I feel a lot of times uninitiated men want to feel strong, want to prove things. There's this adolescent thing, like I gotta prove to mommy and daddy in the background, but to his woman and to his friends and everybody else at the tip of the iceberg. I found that when women are afraid of a man's strength, or when when this idea of like a strong man or powerful man scares women, it's probably not strength. It's probably an internal instability that he's trying to compensate for. It's instability masked by ambition. I think. Look at what I can do. And I don't think that women want power over men. They want relief from having to be in power all the time. Like, let me take this off your plate. I got this for you.
Almost every woman that I know wants to surrender, right? They would rather surrender. It's when the man hasn't risen to the occasion that they feel like they have to, like you said earlier, overcompensate for that, and a lot of times subconsciously trying to initiate you. You know, I found the most beneficial thing that I can do is get around other men, right? Iron sharpens iron. And this is something that we used to do every day, right? We used to go out and hunt. The men would go out and hunt together and we were the providers, right? And we would go and hunt the animal and we would watch each other's backs because there was predators that would take us out if we didn't, and so we're evolved to be one track minded, where we're trying to accomplish this goal, this thing, and then come back around the fire that night while the women are making the dinner and taking care or watching over the children or whatever it is, and we would sit there and we would reflect on our day. We don't do that. We definitely don't do that daily. Almost nobody is doing that daily. Weekly, maybe for some of us, and that's why we've created School for Men, right? And that's why we have every few months we get together around the fire in nature, and we have initiations and we challenge one another. I've found that to be incredibly, incredibly healing, especially from a generation of men who were raised by emotionally unavailable men, a lot of whom were absent a lot of the time because they were providing for the family unit, and we weren't it's not like it used to be. So they don't when we come of age, it's not like they took us to work with them, which our work used to be the hunting and providing, right? They don't take us to work with them and show us the ropes and teach us how to be a man within this structure, right? Society's completely changed. So we're a lot of us being raised by women who don't know how to raise a man in the way that a man knows how to raise a man, right? And so we're missing that guidance and that connection with other men because we never got it from our dads because they weren't, most of them, capable of it. I mean, they were raised from men who just came back from war, bro, who lived through
Right.
the Great Depression. And but things have changed so much. There's so much abundance now compared to what it used to be. Just the nature of how life used to be an initiation. And now there's with so much abundance and so much privilege and so much entitlement all around and so much comfort, even with people who maybe don't have a lot, and at least in the United States here, even our poverty is rich in a lot of places in the world. And so even the people who are struggling aren't experiencing the same hardships and the same initiations that probably 75% or more of the world are. Maybe that statistic's wrong. 50%? I don't know.
Oftentimes, we talk about old people, geezers, you know. I saw this video just the other day. These three young men, this was in London, were making fun of this old guy. But this guy was a fucking hero, in World War II, saving his buddies, taking bullets. He's a badass. They're just assuming he's some old geezer. Young men not trusting and demeaning their elders. There's so many uh, distortions in society that help us. I mean, basically, we're taking our relationship advice from fucking pop culture and TV, all these codependent, narcissistic song lyrics that we might not even know. We're feeding these lyrics, these chants, these fucking codes into children wearing booty shorts when they're 7 years old. Yeah, and it becomes our internal reality becomes our external reality.
You wonder why, people are growing up and little boys are objectifying women and women are seeking validation through flaunting their body or through, physical acts. It's because these are the people we're glorifying. There's a prostitute on TV and we're glorifying her and we're saying that she's a role model for children. Some misogynistic, rich asshole, guy who's got 9 kids by 10 different or 9 kids by 8 different women. You know what I mean? And that's the example for the men, for the little boys. That it's yeah.
Yeah, all this and the masculine now, when we matured past the age of 25 or so, the brain is crystallizing its habits. Still, it is reprogrammable. Nervous systems can be plasticized, are malleable. We can change the wetware through rigorous training and specific modalities. Now, when masculine becomes toxic, He's suppressing emotions, like what he was told to do in childhood. He avoids responsibility because he's just trying to get out of getting into trouble. And so he won't do anything if he avoids responsibility. Then there's no chance that he'll fail and get in trouble, right? Or dissociates and just rails into work. I'm busy. I'm busy. I'm busy. I'm doing my work. Porn, distraction, video games. The correction is containment, not more softness. And fine, if you're dealing with burnout, maybe you just need to fucking rest, man. But nothing is gonna out hack or out handle the basics. If you and your woman both are not sleeping, eating at the right time and the right types of foods for you, the right amounts of foods for you, if you're not sleeping, if you're not eating, if you're not hydrating, you're not moving, and you're not breathing correctly, you are just going to be dysregulated and end up in burnout. And then your relationships are going to be a reflection of the lack of the foundation that you have. So, number one, I think your relationship with God, the divine, whatever that is for you, your relationship with the great creator, and daily, guys, this world is full of information. You have a thing in your pocket. It's pinging you. It's trying to get your attention. You've got work demands, relationship demands, kid demands. If you watch the news, God forbid, you've got all this in your mind. Slow nasal breathing, long exhales. Manage your own nervous system. If you don't have someone to touch you, touch your heart and your belly. And this is just slow breathing. And I'm talking like set a timer for 5 minutes a couple times a day. Why? The man who controls his breath controls the room. There's a parable in Vedic tantras, in Taoist tantra, different wisdom schools of relationships that say the person who's breathing the deepest has the most of effect or most authority or most control, whatever that means to you. But really, what it means is it regulates anger, sexual urgency, reactivity. So that's number one, breath as authority. If you do not have a daily breathing practice and you want to get into a relationship with a woman, you've got to start breathing correctly for yourself. And then remember to breathe around her, especially when things get intense, which they probably will every 28 days or so. You know what I'm saying? So what's next after that? What's next after breath as authority? Healthy masculine authority. And I'm talking about I am the author of my own life. I am whole and complete. And that's why having a woman around is just great and adds pleasure to my life. I don't need anything from her. I'm not trying to get anything from her. Go ahead.
No regulation.
Emotional. Yeah. Yeah. I like to say emotional containment, not necessarily expression. As one of the primary masculine balance points, emotional containment would mean like not necessarily expressing. If you go to a cognitive behavioral therapist or like a traditional cognitive couples therapy, it's just mental, cognitive. And men are taught to share their feelings, but that's super incomplete. Naming an emotion is only one of the benchmarks for processing emotions fully. Two would be breath, right? Breathing. So name it. I feel angry right now. I just met this woman. We were hanging out for the past 3 days. She needed a lot of help, and I was giving her some resources. Part of my life, part mission is to protect women and children. I had met this woman in Bali, and for some reason, her housing fell apart. She needed a place to stay. Now, things were, and this is another point I wanted to make is about judgments. I was with this woman, and I'm just noticing speech patterns, judging people, judging white people, judging black people, judging people in this area of the world, judging people in that area of the world, judging her family. And
This is
then
something this is something that she was doing?
yeah, just noticing speech patterns, and I notice this in a lot of people. Judging, judging, not open, not curious, thinking they know something, and just judging. Like I'm generalizing, I'm blanket casting, judging. Now, unfortunately, judging across the board, judging and this type of negative thinking, whether you study Buddhism, Kabbalah, Christianity, Judaism, Indian yoga, Native American, judging, judgmental thinking is a significant spiritual barrier. It is a significant relationship barrier, unless you want to be funneled down into a cult, basically, a cult of personality, where you're going to find people like that who judge other people like you. And now you have friends that surround you. But guess what? Judgment is just like love. It's a fucking boomerang. And you throw that back, it will come back around to you, and you will wonder why you're having darkness, separation, closure, or difficulty in your relationships. It comes from limited viewpoints. Judgmental thinking operates on incomplete information, but it can make someone feel safe. And so I think maybe it's just a story that I'm creating, that perhaps why this woman was, every time we would have a conversation, it would start and end with just judgments. And
Mm,
finally, the judgments were coming to me, pointed in my direction. And I was complete after that. I won't be speaking to this person again, but um, because I don't want to be separated from my divine intelligence. I don't want to be
mm,
separated from you. I want you to have it all. And I do my best to monitor my own judgments. And of course, they come through. I catch myself being an asshole. And in this interaction, and this goes back to emotional containment, I was I was triggered, and I said, I don't need this shit. And I said a few things that were true, right, correct, and necessary, and they were said through a filter of aggression, which I didn't like. And I was able to instantly stop and say, whoa, I'm being an asshole right now. But congratulations. You've gotten me. You got me. I'm totally sounding like an asshole. So here's what's going to happen. Let's pause for a minute. She paused, and she was recoiling from my touch. I was like, come here. I put my hands out, and she didn't want that. I was like, okay, well, she's not going to play that way. Then let's just pause. And I was able to guide her to safety and move her on to back into her sphere of comfort and a safe place that her previous lodgings had opened up or something like this. So I think containment creates safety. Dumping creates chaos. Now, it's one thing if you're with your mate and something happens, and like maybe she just needs to get it off of her chest.
sometimes you just need to offload, right?
Totally. But it is days on end, and I just meet somebody, they're gonna vibrate out of my reality, because I've worked for 25 years on my own judgmental thinking, right? And regulating my own nervous system and being able to repair quickly. And I just don't need that unless they're a client of mine who specifically wants to work on their relationship or work with their purpose. Then we're going to create a structure, a containment around the language we're using to describe and process our emotions moment to moment, and how we relate to other people, even the things that we don't like. Because when I catch myself in judgment, and this was so great because even this interaction with this woman gave me three big pieces that I can now bring into my journal and process my own unconscious and bring to my coaches and my men's groups, because that I named a few things, or character traits that I really didn't like about this interaction. And whenever we can do that, usually not 100% of the time, but very often, 90% of the time, there's something in there that's a trait in me that I don't like, that I don't want to bring out into the world, but I can use, because there's a gift underneath this. And that's when we get into shadow work, which is one of the basic courses in school for men that anybody can access for free if they were to join right now. And I didn't mean that to be a plug, but that's what we do here. We clear the baggage, clear the judgments, so we don't have to keep receiving them from the women, from our work, or from people in life. I don't want that shit coming back around to me. So I'm just going to eliminate it altogether. And that satisfies my masculine urge for freedom in this moment. I don't have to keep going around the world and leaving, and the grass is not greener on the other side. If I can stay in the judgment and regulate my own nervous system and challenge, that's a warrior practice. In your experience, what what do most women do, or what character traits do they exhibit when they want something? When the feminine becomes toxic, what's happening?
In my experience, they make themselves victims. They make themselves victims in some way, shape, or form. You know, me and like my knight archetype wants to come and save them or provide support, relief, something of that nature. And that I think this is interesting. In my prior engagement, right? I found that she was not able to get out of that victim mentality. And, you know, over years and years and years of experiencing that and of trying to assist her out of that place, especially when there were things going on that in essence were out of my control. Like, look, you have health issues. I can't go in there and fix your body. Like, I can provide tens of thousands of dollars worth of supplements and resources and doctor visits and all of these things. But if you don't get over your limiting belief system that I believe is actually the culprit for these issues that they're seeming to be going in perpetuity, right? Like
So she's not taking
nothing more I
action
can do.
for herself. She's more testing you to see if you can handle it for her.
I mean, I guess I kind of got off topic from like what I originally said with the victim mentality aspect of it. I think I just got into like what my personal experience with something with an extreme version of victim mentality and the frustration that I experience because when you're in relation with somebody, you're invested in their outcomes and their struggle becomes your struggle.
Especially if she doesn't feel like she's safe or led through that process. Now, regardless of whether you were doing it effectively or not, she's going to see you through a specific perspective. Her unconscious is informing what is happening. It might not even be reality. Not trying to fucking gaslight this person or anybody here, but testing a man endlessly over managing a situation or leading from an anxiety or chaotic place, trying to lead you without regulating is one way that the feminine in everyone, we have this in us too, comes toxic. You know, here's I would say the fast and hard truth is that most relationships most relationships have problems that aren't compatibility issues. They're fucking nervous system mismatches. I'm gonna work on regulating my nervous system so that I'm cool for you, and I expect that my woman to be in her women's circle and with her therapists or coaches or her personal growth partners to be helping her to do the same and recognize when things are getting charged and to end up maybe even having fun and laughing about it later. But practice restores balance faster than conversations ever will. I think a core feminine practice, whether you're a man or a woman and you catch yourself in these modes, is to try this every day this week. Allow yourself to be helped and accept compliments without deflection or wondering if what they're up to. Like, what are you trying to get from me? Just accept compliments. Thank you. And pause before correcting someone. This is something that I can be guilty of. And I really do my best to watch out for because, you know, super high IQ, neurodivergent self knows a lot of data, has researched a lot of data, and especially when it comes to grammar and associative meaning and physiology and biology, foodstuffs, nutrition, personal growth practices. I know I know things based off of what I've done and how I've helped people over the years in those areas that I just mentioned. And it's not my business to fucking correct everybody. I'm not a Parisian man living in Paris, and the American guy comes and is like, "Parlez-vous?" No, 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 parlez-vous. I'm not going to correct you. You know, I don't need to correct people. But just allow help this week, man or woman. Listen to this. Accept compliments and pause before correcting. Why? Because the feminine heals by letting herself be met, by letting reality unfold, not by criticizing, not by judging, not by trying to control every aspect of reality. That's harsh.
This reminds me of I went through a period in my life where, well, there's been waves of this in my life where I've alienated a lot of people. When I was much younger, this was intentional in a sense as part of like a protection mechanism. And then later, I would say probably in my late 20s, where I was projecting my reality onto other people, and that's not what they wanted, right? Because I want to be the best version of myself, mind, body, and soul, right? And so I assume that other people also want that. And so I project beliefs and practices, and I'm correcting people, is how they're viewing it, me correcting them. I'm viewing it as I think that I'm adding value to them, right? I'm offering them a better way of doing things. If they haven't asked for that, right? When you're giving unwarranted advice, people just ended up thinking that I was a fucking know-it-all, you know? And it's like, if I have something that can improve this thing that you're talking to me about or this way that you're doing things, and I don't mention that to you, I feel like I'm hoarding knowledge or information, you know, and that to me is uncomfortable. But what I need to realize is that most people are not me. As a matter of fact, I've rarely met people who are like me, unique in many, many ways, right? And so a lot of people, when they're talking to you about the things they're struggling with or their problems or what's going on, or just in general, just talking about life stuff to you, they just want to be heard. They don't want to be corrected. A lot of times they don't want help. They're not asking for help, right? And so unless they've specifically asked for help, or I'll try and if it feels right, if the energy's right around it, if there's space where I'd be like, you know, can I offer you some advice right now, or are you just kind of wanting to be heard? You know, and finding out,
Mm,
because a lot of times, yeah, I'm expressing frustrations to people, and I'm expressing those frustrations to them because audibly, I'm a lot of times it helps me to have conversations where you and I've done this many times, right? We're talking about this thing that we're struggling with, and then through that, I have my own epiphany. I could do this, or I could do that, or this is what's going on, right? And so I'm having these conversations consciously or subconsciously with the idea that this conversation is going to help me to up level or solve this issue, or come to some sort of conclusion on a course of action that could help me, whereas most people aren't having conversations in that manner. They're just having conversations because they just want to be heard, and they just want to express this thing, you know. So that's been a challenge for me. I found that I just shut the fuck up a lot more now,
I mean, that's basically a couple. You just
you
named a
know.
practice that any couple could do right now. Is an evening reset, right? You come together. The man is breathing slow and deep. The woman gets to speak and express freely without interruption. No fixing, no solutions, no advice. Well, safety first, solutions later, right? Like, hey, I'm here. And also, a good practice for both women and men to do is a softening practice. Things like stretching, yoga, like a super hot showers, just slow walks in nature without the fucking phone. Be in nature 20 or 30 minutes, just go walk. Why? Well, because a soft body invites presence. And if my belly's tight, it means I'm stressed out. There's emotions happening. I do not have the presence of mind. Yeah, it's restricted. My is one of the brains in my body. If my gut, my heart, and my head are not aligned, something's out of balance, then there's going to be more chaos, less presence.
You had said something earlier, and it reminded me of, I believe it's a Ron Dass quote. It may not be perfect word for word, but the idea is on point, and it is, "All that I can do for you is work on me." and
Yeah.
all that you can do for me is work on you, right? And there's I have the things that I'm working on for myself so that, and we had mentioned this earlier in the conversation, so that I can show up as the best version for you and for everybody else who's in my life, because I deserve to have the best version of me in my life, and so do the people that I care about around, and vice versa for everybody that I have around me. Like I don't keep people in my life who aren't trying to improve and get better for the most part. You know what I mean? Like I want to surround myself with people who are on the same journey as me, and that is that we are trying to improve and become better and become the best versions of ourselves, and being vulnerable and being open and talking about the things that we're struggling with, and hoping that somebody else has some advice or some feedback for me or some hack or some trick or something that has worked for them, or that maybe they have a friend who they know that it's helped them. And again, and I know we keep coming back to it, but this is why a night's council is so important, right? That this is why our weekly meetup, where we just sit and just get to witness one another. I know we're getting into more and more exercises now, which these, it's not to say that these aren't exercises that I can do on my own, but how much more powerful it is to be sitting in a circle of other men who are also doing these things, who are working towards a similar goal of self improvement, of up leveling. It is these things are powerful beyond measure, and they're so simple and yet so profound. And I think the most effective practices that I've instilled in my life are that way. They are simple and profound. The shifts that occur are very simple, straightforward, and yet incredibly profound in a very, very subtle way.
That's beautiful, man. Thank you for sharing that. I want to compel everyone listening to some moment of this, or like a little quotable moment happen for you to like and subscribe, join the school group if you're a man, and come in. If you want to improve your life, if something's not working out for you, you're seeing a pattern. I would love it if you would decide right now. My invitation here is to begin your process, or just start now from a place of feeling that you're whole and complete. There's nothing inside of you that's fucked up in some way. You might feel that way, or you might think thoughts like this, like, what, why is this happening to me? But coming into personal growth, or I wish somebody would have told me this 25 years ago, that I'm not going to get anywhere, or nothing's going to be fixed through this work. I'm simply going to get to know myself better than anyone else on the entire planet, and know how I operate in the world to such a degree that I can be a blessing wherever I go. That no matter where I am, I can help somebody. And that doesn't mean I got to take shit from people for acting like an asshole, you know, or throwing some shade at me. I don't got to
It's
take that on.
the opposite, actually. Yeah.
Right. And in order to be able to not take that on, this whole unfuckwithable thing that happened over the last 10 years, that I think is dissolving into a better term. But, like, just, it's okay if people are wiggling. They're just wiggling how they're going to wiggle. They're operating at their level. And I don't have to take on anybody else's problems. It doesn't mean that I become the asshole, but it certainly doesn't mean that I am going to let somebody come at me with a knife or fists or verbal abuse or disrespect, and not ask them what their intention is with those statements or those actions, so that I can figure out if I need to, de-escalate through action or aggression or words. And we do that through the groups that you just described. Cultivate that presence, work with our emotions. We're not spilling it out into the people around us as very often, if ever. The idea is to just stop doing that shit, have a less stress, better relationships, and a body that's able to maintain more muscle mass, which is awesome because it looks good. And if I'm stressed out all the time, I'm going to be hanging on to more fat and stress hormones and stuff like this. So I think at the end of the day, what I got out of this conversation is that most problems in relationships is not a problem, a compatibility issue, unless you really don't know what you want. You got to do some compatibility stuff. You got to do some values work. That's why values work is usually number one. People step in, they learn how their mind works, how to learn, and then let's get to work on our values so we can make decisions from that place and align with people. Doesn't mean, I don't need my partner to have 100% of my values. It's not never going to happen. It's your fingerprint. But let's get this stuff figured out. So when we encounter friction, when we encounter difficulty, life is going to throw this shit at us all the time. But to be able to say, this is for me or this is not for me. And thank you. And all the love and light to you in the world. I wish you well. Not for me. Or hey, well, I wish you well. And you are for me. Keep putting energy into this. So I want energy rich connections, not energy draining connections. And the interaction that I was just describing with this woman became too expensive for me to continue interacting with her. And to be able to have that discernment and do it calmly and do it in a way that's not harmful, I think is what anyone is looking for, whether you're a man or a woman wanting to be in a relationship. If you're not going to check out and live in the mountain, want to be in this world, let's learn these skills, regulate our nervous systems, and bring about the divinity that is our birthright. It's not the church's birthright. It's not the Pope's birthright. It's not some other person's right. It will be unless you decide it's not and take it on for yourself. And that's the real deal.
And also maybe we can go live in the mountains most of the time and still do this work with people.
Hell yeah. That's definitely happening.